Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Workplace Wanderer. Very proud to announce this is the #1 podcast I've recorded this week. And I am excited about today's topic. Today, we're actually going to be discussing mental health literacy at work within corporations. And this is somewhere that my whole workplace wanderer journey had really started in improving mental health literacy at workplaces. This is where I began, was going to corporations and teaching them about substance use disorders was how I started and how they show up at work. And then it went to teaching them about mental health and what that looked like at work. And then really progressed towards now me focusing full time on helping to improve workplaces all around and improve the workplace dynamics. I stopped focusing so much on the actual issue of mental health or substance use disorders and started looking at what's the root cause that's causing mental health problems or causing people to move towards substances. So today I have a guest on. I'm very excited to talk to, and someone that this is near and dear to her heart in terms of improving mental health literacy, because this is what she does on a day-to-day basis. This is the company that she works with, runs. Total badass here. This is what they focus on. So Laura Kunz, welcome to the Workplace Wanderer.
Thanks, Blake. I'm very excited to be here. I've been watching the podcast for probably about 6 months now. So,
Oh, that was you. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Sweet. All right. Our one fan. And as always, in an effort to be more inclusive to our guests and to our listeners, I always ask our guests to introduce themselves so that they can speak to what is important to them today and what matters most. So, Laura, if you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Laura Kunz. I am currently the Vice President of Spirence. I also do work for our sister organization, Futures Recovery Healthcare. I have worked in behavioral health for almost 15 years. Prior to that, I
Wow.
was actually, I was in residential real estate. Don't really ask me where the bridge was there, but there was one.
There's got to be something in
There
there.
was one, yeah. And yeah, I'm a mom of two. I live in Jupiter, Florida, so I'm definitely a working mom. And you know, I love the sun and I love to be outside and I love people. I think that's a huge part of who I am too. I really love people. I love learning about people. I love helping people. And so really the work that I do every day goes very much hand in hand with that aspect of me and who I am.
Wow. No, that makes a ton of sense. I love when people say that they love people. And I think that is, if I'm speaking honestly, it's a battle that I go back and forth with. There's some days where I can't stand people, and there's some days that I love people. And I think what I've realized is I love the potential that people have. And I love watching people win. And I love being a part of that process. And I love watching people make a change or go through a hard time and dig their way out.
Yeah.
So I love human potential. I don't always love human behavior. and, sometimes I realize I need to also detach from people so that I can maintain that loving relationship with people. But I think that, um, when you end up finding your way into this industry, because we do have a belief that inherently that people are good and that we want people to win. And I could see that in you. And I think that you loving people really speaks to why you've been able to have such longevity in this field so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you just said about the potential, but then also understanding that, and it's just my personal belief system too, is just meeting people where they are. I mean, that's such an overused term, I think, in
Mhm.
behavioral healthcare, but in life, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if every relationship were easy, what would that look like? It's how people learn, it's how people grow, and I'm very invested in that in my own
Yeah.
life, in my relationships, and building resiliency within those, and having those relationships be a reflector to myself,
Yeah.
and my own personal growth. So I just think the roadmap there that exists, that you teach people every day, that so many people teach every day is fascinating. And I just one of my life goals is to make sure everybody has access to those tools.
Which is so important and really leads to what you guys are doing. And when we talk about mental health literacy at work, that this is really a big piece of it. And I think a lot of meeting people where they're at is something that is missing at workplaces. A lot of it is very sort of, I don't want to say self-centered, but it's a lot of ego-driven type decisions that are made at work.
Agreed.
And by the way, and I know I've said this before on the podcast, when I say things like that, I'm not necessarily saying like a right or wrong, bad or good type of comment. What I'm just saying is sort of stating facts, and I'm not adding any judgment to it, but it's very natural for us to make decisions at work that are a bit ego driven because we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting our job, our livelihoods. So we make decisions that we feel are going to provide us a sense of security. However, what we end up doing is slowly chipping away at our culture by doing that, and which slowly chips away at the mental health of the people around us, and it sort of creates like it ego-driven decisions create more ego-driven decisions, and it creates a sense of competitiveness that we don't want at
So
work
much.
necessarily.
So much. And yeah, I mean, I also love the whole like thinking around we recreate our family systems in the workplace too.
Yeah. Oh
you
my
know so
God.
so you're also bringing in all of those dynamics, with I feel like the ego driven decisions though so often come because people truly don't know any differently. They
Hmm.
don't know anything else. They don't have the language or even the inspiration to do anything different. I mean, I hear that all the time, that
Right.
it's very tough for people to even conceptualize what a healthy workplace looks like and is, because
Well, and
they've never worked in one, and they've certainly
yeah,
never been one.
well, they've never worked in one, and for generations, workplaces have been operating as this like dog eat dog world. And you check
Yeah.
yourself at the door and you get your work done, and whoever produces the most is the winner today. And that's sort of how workplaces operated for so long. And what's really cool is that we're starting to transition out of that. And it's cool for us, may not be cooler for older generations, but it's cool for us, for the generations that care more about having better human interactions at work, and we find more of a sense of purpose in our workplaces than we did before. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, and so through our work experience, we're hearing that the generations coming into the workforce expect that. They expect a healthy workplace. They expect mental health support in the workplace, and they will not work for that company if they don't have it. I mean,
Yeah.
and that traces back to, I think, COVID blew the lid off of,
Hmm.
mental health stigma. And so many in that generation are so into therapy and wellness and love of self, and so they're just built that way. They're coming into your workplace built that way.
Yeah.
So giddy up.
Well, I remember reading some statistic that we essentially spend the majority of our life at work,
Yeah.
and we're in some type of work setting for the majority of our life. Yet we have always been expected to remove our humanity during those work hours and to just function almost as robots or just to get a job done. And I think COVID shed a spotlight of like, that's really not possible. And we need to actually emphasize our humanity if we want to be able to be sustainable, to sustain long term in our lives, in our careers. We have to have like a sense of like, why does this all matter? And by bringing our humanness to work, we can actually find that sense of purpose and find that sense of belonging that we've always looked for elsewhere. Now we can find that in our workplace.
I love that you stand for that and that you teach that, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard, not even in the work through spirits and talking to so many workplace leaders. But even in our own workplace at Futures and, other workplaces I've worked in, that people don't know, to my point, they don't know how to foster that. They have no idea how to allow an employee to be themselves within the boundaries of what a workplace requires legally, within the boundaries of what a workplace requires historically, to your point. It's built to function. It's built to,
Yeah.
it's very masculine. It's very masculine. So, if we want to take the conversation there to try to integrate some of that feminine
Yeah.
and allow emotions to be okay, that definitely takes training, I think, for people. It takes language skills, communication skills, where people want it black and white. They want to know, okay, if I do this, this, and this, people will feel safe to be themselves at work, but
100%.
that takes the work out of it. It's each individual conversation. It's each individual employee. You have to put effort in consistently, really.
Yeah, well, and I want to jump back to another thing that we've said on this podcast a couple times too, is that then when we bring up masculine and feminine values, before some dude is like listening right now and is like, oh, well, screw that, I don't believe in
Oh,
this. I want to just emphasize again, like it has nothing to do with male and female. It's
right,
it's
right.
really about a set of values, and um, we're not talking about it in terms of like a right or wrong, or you should be more feminine or more masculine. It's really
Right.
more about uh, again, bringing that human side and like an allowing a space for emotions to be at work. And I think the reason why so many workplaces struggle with this is that like the truth is that it's really difficult. Like it's not an easy, this isn't some easy task to just introduce and say, hey, I'm going to make my workplace mental health friendly. I'm going to make it I'm going to be an authentic leader, and it's going to be an authentic workplace now, and everybody can be themselves. It is so contextual and
Yeah.
requires so much self-awareness and situational awareness from not just the main leader, but from everybody within the system to understand what's going on around them. And it, not to come full circle here, but I'm damn well about to. It's all about meeting people where they're at.
It
And
absolutely is. I mean, that's honestly how Spirence was built, because it's like you have to start somewhere. And the
yes,
mental health literacy level nationally is even lower than the health literacy level, which is extreme, the physical health literacy level, which
yeah.
is extremely low. I mean, most people are going to Google to figure out
Mhm.
what's going on there. And then for their mental health, they're probably going to Google as well. So if they even know what to Google, that's how low it is.
They're
Um,
probably, even because some of the stigma, which is slowly going away, but they're probably going in incognito mode to go Google that stuff just because they're afraid to have find it on their computer that they're
oh
searching
yeah.
mental health at work.
Oh,
Um,
diet anxiety, not me. Yeah.
yeah, right. I then going back though to what you said about meeting people where they're at, I would love to explore that a little bit more. And what does that mean? So, like, I know initially when I was working in the mental health field specifically, that started getting brought up. So, could you maybe give us a little bit of background of what does it mean to meet somebody where they're at in, let's say, mental health, and then how does that translate over to the workplace? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I can just tell you how we translated it and applied it at Spirence to take it into the workplace.
Great.
So the last few years, there were several national workplace mental health studies that showed, and this was so eye-opening for me coming from residential behavioral health. So picture a spectrum. So it showed that the average workplace has about 25% of their employees that have a need for clinical services. So that's
Mhm.
therapy, that's psychiatry, medication, could be residential treatment. Even smaller percentage of that 25% need or ever going to need crisis support. That's your acute levels of care, intervention, et cetera. Um, and I don't know that the one study factored in the loved ones, or in all of the dependents. I believe it was just the employees. So then and historically, that's where workplaces would invest in mental health support was for that 25%. That's where you see your EAPs that provide, 4 to 12 therapy sessions a year, just depending on what it is. They'll even provide coaching, which is a little bit lower level. A lot of the new companies going into the workplace that focused on mental health, they also focused on that 25% of people. But what about the 75% that's still sitting there? And, they might be in any given day on a spectrum of thriving to surviving to struggling, right? So
Yeah.
they don't meet the need for anything clinical yet, but they have enough days in that struggling category. And eventually, and workplaces, a lot of times they'll make these decisions of what kind of resources they bring in for support. I mean, it's comes down to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
So, they're seeing the 25% bleed it out in the claims therapy, because we know as mental health professionals, by the time they get there to that 25% bucket, they are going to need more to treat that condition if it's developed into a condition, or for them to figure out what's going on with them because they have built zero mental health literacy prior. They just heard therapy helps mental health, so they go get therapy.
Yeah.
So that's what we set out to do, was build something that supported that other. It actually supports the full 100%, because, even the people in the 25% bucket can benefit from learning about mental
Yes.
health, learning how to identify what's going on with them, not through Google, but through experts who can break down their 20 years of knowledge, into bite-sized content for people to consume on demand, self-paced, and privacy on their own time, and consume it of as much of it as they need to for it really to stick. So,
Yeah.
that's how we structured it to help, and the feedback we've gotten so far has been really cool with that. Because
I could imagine.
we didn't just set out to help the employee. Experience is for the loved ones too. So it's for all of the household dependents as well.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So, and it just comes with the subscription to it, is for the household dependents. Because, what we see working in, or have seen working in residential mental health and substance use or substance use disorders, is that by the time they get into that 25% bucket, sometimes it's too late to
Yeah,
educate.
exactly.
They're in crisis and they can't retain it,
Right. Well,
so
that's what I keep thinking about here is like, I think traditionally, like you've been saying, is that there have been services for that 25% that existed. And I would say maybe 10% of the people in that 25% even use those services because
exactly.
they're so fearful to come forward, or they don't know how to use it, or they end up maybe holding on a little bit too long and things get worse. So they end up hospitalized, or an incident on the job or something happens. The approach that you all are taking makes so much sense, though, to really kind of improve the literacy and really get a conversation started about mental health within the workplace, which ultimately, to me, is not only improving literacy, but you're improving cultural, the culture of the organization, where you're letting people know that, hey, it's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to take care of yourself. We care about you. I think the way that so many companies did it in the past was, hey, we're going to offer some services for people that if we really run them ragged and run them to the bone, they've got some services. We can check that box and say that, hey, there's resources out for our employees if they need it. But
Yes.
in the meantime, we're going to beat them up, and we're going to really make this, I don't like using the term toxic workplace, but we're just going to act like nothing else is going on. We're going to work people to the bone, and we're not really going to care at offering any other services to everybody else in the corporation. And if it gets bad enough, of course, something exists for them, and they can probably find it in their HR manual.
Absolutely. Well, and so this year, really, it started in Q4 of last year and into conversations this year. We've heard from HR directors that it's employees are struggling with even getting simple questions answered. They're being offered the therapy or whatever the resources are, and they're like, I don't need that. Can't somebody
Yeah.
just help me with X, So giving people even the language to talk about something. Such a good example, 2 weeks ago, there was a woman who watched one of the topics is eating disorders, myths about eating disorders. And there's 5 modules on it. She watched a couple modules and she gave us feedback and said, I can now talk to my niece who's struggling with bulimia, whereas I had no idea how to talk to her about it. She just didn't want to say the wrong thing.
Yep.
So it's
Well, and you're attacking something that is so also overlooked by a lot of organizations is that presenteeism piece, right? Where
thank you. Yes.
yeah, so they're at work, but they're not at work mentally because they're worried
Yes.
about their niece who might have an eating disorder and how do I
Yes.
talk to them? So you're giving people resources to say, okay, I can relax now. I know how to have this conversation. I don't have to sit here planning and plotting how to do that. I'm going to do my job now. So you're helping to provide that relief through education and through this literacy process.
You just nailed it. I'd say so far the biggest piece of feedback, that it just gives people that bit of relief that they need to,
Mhm.
feel like they've checked the box in their mind with what's going on with them. Another really hot topic that people, I hate to call it a hot topic because it's so tough for people, is so many caring for elderly parents that have dementia, that are sick,
That is a hot topic.
presenteeism. I know it's terrible, Laura Ann.
It's okay.
But boy, Lord, I cannot tell you how many times we've heard it though, that people are struggling to be present because they're
100%.
doing all of this. And the question is, well, how can I protect their mental health? And so what we say at Spirence, well, we're going to teach you how to protect yours while you're caring for them.
Yes.
It's people don't even get that piece.
Yeah. It's enormous. And every type of mental health concern or any type of thing that we've got going on, whether it's even financial literacy, trying to figure out your whole finance piece, that affects our mental health,
Big
you
time.
know, right. So understanding all of those things and having resources at work that can maybe help you understand that actually makes you more productive at work, which I imagine is sort of the business case. I'm always interested in going into, okay, this all sounds really nice and this is all really, it's very humane. And I think this attacks a lot of the social issues. Why would a business want to do this? What's the business case for bringing, let's say, spirits in to their workplace?
Well, I mean, I think number one, more and more employers are feeling pressure to do that because you do have these new generations coming in and that's what they expect. They expect to be holistically cared for.
So
And
attracting talent.
absolutely. And I mean,
Yeah.
are they wrong I mean, that's everything you teach. That's everything I
No.
stand for too, us being, authentic in all areas of our life. But no, absolutely. Attracting talent is one of them. I think a lot of workplaces today have a leader within it that's championing, they're a mental health advocate themselves. And
Mhm.
whether it's through their own personal experience or really I've worked with a few HR leaders so far where they've just felt the gravity of the mental health challenges within the workplace and they want to do something about it.
HR has broadened so much from what it used to be to what it is now, where
Yeah.
it used to just kind of be like, hey, that was the person. If you're in trouble, you go talk to HR. They carry out all the employment law type stuff and they make sure all the paperwork is done. And now HR has taken on such a huge responsibility of employee wellness and making sure employees feel heard and taken care of. And they are really change makers in the culture world of making sure that the culture of an organization supports productivity and longevity at work.
I think that's so well said. I've really learned that the last, year or so building and working for Spirits is how dynamic of professionals HR leaders are. As an employee and a colleague, did not see it that way either.
Mhm.
You just see them as where, they send out the benefits, but no, they're jacks of all trades. It's,
Yeah.
you know, their hands in here, their hands in here, their hands in here. So I totally agree. And maybe that's a reason they're also so invested in mental health. They know they need it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine
They
how
are.
burnt out they are.
they're sort of the first responders of the work world, and
100%.
it's a tough job to have. And like oftentimes, like very many other people in helping professions, they're the last ones to take care of themselves and they're the last ones to be taken care of.
Well, right. And I mean,
Uh,
if people are coming to you with what so many don't have a choice but to go to their HR leaders with today, because there is so much going on in the world. Critical incidents in the workplace are increasing even, that spectrum's very large.
mhm.
You know, how hard is it for them to have the right thing to say and do in every moment with every employee? It's no joke. So,
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of pressure there. And I think this is where a lot of hesitancy, and you just brought up a great point. A lot of hesitancy comes from, for a lot of organizations, bringing in professionals to help train them on mental health literacy at work or how to
yeah.
operate in a way that takes care of their employees and improves mental health. There's a lot of hesitancy there because I think there's a bit of a misnomer that they have to essentially learn how to become therapists and they have to always answer and say the right things in every moment. And I can't help but keep circling back to what you said in the beginning, but it's really not about that. It's about meeting people where they're at and responding to the context of the situation. It's about presence
Oh,
and mindfulness.
I could not agree more. And sometimes all people need is just space to be held for them.
Yeah.
I saw this image a couple weeks ago. I actually put it on my LinkedIn where it's a stand, stands in a football stadium. And on one side, it's what happens when someone is getting congratulations and the stands are full, because someone's achieved something, someone's accomplished something, and all your people show up for you for that. And then the
Mhm.
other photo is somebody who needs support because they're going through something hard and the stands are empty and that person's sitting there themselves because,
Mm.
and the caption was, what if just one person went and just sat there? You
Right.
don't have to do anything. Just sit next to them and, let them know they're not alone. But it's just something so
Yeah.
simple like that is why you bring training
Yeah.
into your workplace. Little tips can change the game.
There was I mean, I agree. There was a training that I had done, and I think I'll actually be doing with you guys soon enough, is about active listening at work and sort of what it is and what it isn't. And I think what we need to do is give space for active listening and give space for employees to have kind of what I've always like called an anything goes meeting, where you have a regularly scheduled meeting with an employee, whether if you're a manager, a leader, boss, whatever it is, you have the people under you have a regularly scheduled meeting where anything goes. And that's a space for you to be able to listen, to ask questions that are open-ended, to check in with them personally and professionally. And then outside of those times, you guys can focus on getting the job done and focus on what you need to focus on to make sure that your goals are met. But I think people need a space at work to know that they can feel safe to talk to their leader, to talk to their boss. And oftentimes the boss has to be the one to initiate that conversation. And saying to somebody, hey, my door's always open to you is not enough. You need to have a time scheduled so that you're not just saying that your door is open at any time for if they want to talk, but you're
Yeah.
actually inviting that person through the door at a specific time where they know that hey, I'm gonna have this conversation that's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be at that time, instead of expecting the employee to have the courage and to be brave enough to walk through that door when something's wrong.
I read or watched something on your social media about this, and I thought it was the best suggestion
Sweet.
because, I thought it was great because talk about people wanting to be or a way for people to really feel seen in the workplace as a human.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I hear that more and more too from my colleagues. Like they're going through things. They want to be acknowledged as a human being and as an employee. That's a lot of pressure for
Yeah.
managers. That's a lot of pressure. Where do they draw the line? So to have that sort of a structure, I think is amazing. I'm so excited to hear that's one of the pieces that you're doing for us.
Yeah,
I'd love
I
to
think
have
it's an
that
important
in the
one.
training, you know?
Well, and it just kind of speaks to the simplicity of like, there's a few things that you have to do to help improve the culture at your job. And if, as long as you do them consistently over time, the culture will get better. But you've got to be able to create space for people to feel safe and to have conversations that are difficult and to be able to open up and bring their problems to work so those problems can be worked through. It's
Right.
not saying that you as a manager have to sit there and be a therapist and work towards solving the problem for them, but you're hearing the problem. You're asking them, how does that, what implications may that have on your work being done, and how can I help you in getting your work done if that's what you're struggling with? By the way, here's also resources that you can watch through Spirence or whatever it may be that can help you maybe improve this issue. Or did you know that we do offer therapy sessions? Maybe this sounds like something that a professional could help you with. Would you like me to connect you with HR or connect you with the EAP? But it opens up the door for that conversation and helps the person take one step closer to getting better.
Well, absolutely. And you just brought up a good point that one of the other eye-opening things in our work through experience is the disconnect between HR and benefits being launched and them ever getting to an employee,
Isn't there
right?
crazy statistics on that? I'm sure you have the numbers, but there's like
So,
crazy stats.
because utilization is incredibly low, but I see why. Because,
Mhm.
it's there's a huge, an organization really has to invest quite a bit of time and strategy into how they're going to distribute that information.
Yes.
Especially if it's something like mental health. I just talked with an organization about this. It's not we're launching a new employee benefit. It's we're launching a new employee mental health benefit exclamation point. It's like you have to brand it, make it cool, sell it.
Yep.
And especially in today's day and age, they're going to open that because it says mental health and they're dying for those resources. But,
Yep.
historically, or in some situations that we've seen, it barely makes it to the management level to
Yeah.
where they really understand what is offered. I mean, I'll be honest, I've worked for our parent company I'm in my ninth year. And I just now, and granted, we've changed this benefit a couple times, but I'm outing myself as an employee. I just now fully logged into our EAP suite and clicked through all the clicks that I needed, which it actually was a lot of clicks, to find out that we had 4 free coaching sessions
Wow.
and 12 counseling sessions a year. Yeah, I just now, after all this time there.
So this is something I'd love to talk about too. And I agree with you 1000%. And I'm so glad that you guys are talking about this on a larger scale. It's so important that, again, I think this speaks to a lot of corporations trying to check boxes and saying, hey, we offer these resources, but they don't actually take the steps to promote it. They just feel like they have to offer these benefits because it's the right thing to do. But now we're moving into a phase of life in this world where these things do matter, and they have to really worry about how do we brand this? How do we promote these services so to make sure that they actually get utilized? I mean, you're paying for them. You might as well let them get utilized. But that's something I used to, when I would do presentations at work in workplaces and some of these big corporations that I knew had an EAP, I would ask the crowd, because it was speaking to all of the employees, I would ask them, can everybody raise your hand here if you ever used your EAP? And you'd get like one or two hands up. And I go, let me ask you a follow-up question. Who here knows that you have an EAP? And you'd get like another one or two, maybe 4 or 5 hands. And then I would go, okay, let me ask you another question. Who here even knows what EAP stands for? And you'd get like the exact same like 4 or 5 people. And I would look over at the HR manager and go, hey, what's going on? And they would go, oh, it was in their employee manual that they signed the paperwork. They know that they have this. And I'm like, let me tell you something. Nobody reads that. I don't care what you say. Nobody reads that. No one cares. The employee manual that's never been read. That's maybe not true, but for the most part, no one reads that. We need to worry about how are we promoting these services. We need to make it cool. There should be flyers everywhere. There should be Slacks going out. There should be emails going out. There should be conversations being had at the beginning of every meeting. Hey, just a reminder, guys, in case anyone wants to utilize it, it's completely confidential. We do have some employee services for mental health. If you wanted to talk to somebody, you can. Okay, let's jump into the meeting. It should be talked about in that way and regularly.
I totally agree. It does take effort. And, does it fall on the HR leaders or does it fall on the managers? Because
Everybody.
right, right. That's so true. I was going to say these poor HR leaders, and we've identified another point of pressure. Now they have to be marketers and salespeople too, but you're right. It falls on everybody.
It's everybody.
Yeah.
The HR professionals, well, really, it should come from the top, but the HR professionals should be the ones creating initiatives to the managers for the managers to enact. They should be
Right.
the ones doing it, because I'm a very firm believer that people do what their manager tells them to do, and their managers are the ones that make things okay or not okay. And so HR can do something, and it's always going to feel like HR is just doing it because they have to. If your manager says, hey, there's a therapy service that's going on, I might actually reach out to them. This sounds like
Yeah.
a good idea. And just putting that out there, it lets other people know that it's okay. It's that trickle down leadernomics there.
Interesting. I've never heard that before. The trickle down leader.
I just made it up. That's why.
Yeah, no, I like it. And it is true though, because like think about it in an employee's shoes, and I'll just put myself, I am an employee. I would feel seen right there in that moment. Like you're
Mhm.
acknowledging me as a human right there in that moment because
Yeah.
you wrote that. I actually did have a manager once who in like a weekly download mentioned it. Hey, I want you using your PTO. I mean, this was in the mental health field too. I want you using your PTO. If anybody needs additional support, we do them an EAP. Now, I do feel EAP is a little stigmatized though. A lot of people immediately, put a little bit of a stigma with it, but it
Yeah.
was, you take your days off. This is hard work that we do, and it was like, wow, okay. Feel very human.
Yeah. I think in mental health, that's even harder. Like the PTO conversations and a lot of what we're talking about there's a whole nother layer to it in the overall culture of mental health treatment, of taking time off for yourself. Almost feels selfish when you're in a helping profession like this. It's really hard to do. And there's a whole other layers to it of things that leaders should be doing to make sure that that PTO is used and people are taking time for self-care. That's a tough one. I know for me, I'll speak for myself personally. I know for me, I had time that I could take off, but I felt so guilty of putting the burden of helping someone, helping in a helping profession, putting that burden on other people and feeling like I'm abandoning my clients for a brief period of time. I'm putting that pressure on my coworkers to help take over from and help my clients. So I'm adding more to their plate and they're already burnt out. There were so many layers to it that made it hard to take off time. And that's where I think these organizations need to build in systems that allow for people to take time off, or almost and essentially force or help people take time off and really plan for it well.
Could not agree more. I do know of an organization, it's actually in the mental health space, and they incentivize based on it's part of their bonus package that they use their PTO, and that their colleagues are incentivized to step in and help,
That's really
colleagues
cool.
when they use their PTO. It's the coolest thing. I'll tell you offline who the organization is
Yeah, I want
actually.
to know. That's great.
I think it's the neatest thing. And one of the things that I see managing people, and I see in my colleagues, and I see in myself, is that technology also makes it so hard to
Yeah.
really take quality
Oh my God.
PTO. So hard. I mean, someone taught me last year how to put an away message up on my text on my iPhone for texts. Have you ever done that before?
No, I saw that you have that. When I text you the other day, you got to teach me how to do that, because I've always wondered
Yeah.
how that's possible.
It's
Um,
unbelievable. A colleague of mine taught me. I've probably taught 20 people because the people will text me. And now if you put that boundary up, you have to hold to it. I think with you, I didn't. I texted
I
you
think you
right.
did respond a few minutes later. Yeah, but
Yeah, so most of the time I don't. If it's up, I'm not available. But that's how hard it is for people. You have to go to great lengths to really let people know, especially in like you were saying, a helping profession where you're on call in any sort of capacity. Um, you don't want to leave somebody hanging.
it's tough. It's tough. And I think it depends on each individual too, of like how do you detach? I know for me, I don't know what it is. It's like an OCD thing where if I have an email, I have to read it. If I got a text, I got to read it. So for me, like I go to places like in May, I'm going to Moab National Park and it's off the grid and there's no cell service there. And I will be completely off the grid. My phone goes in a backpack for 4 or 5 days, and I can't be able to access my phone. Because I know
Yeah.
for me, like I have to make those plans to say, okay, you got to detach completely, or you're not going to. Um, I know in the past too, I've also automatically forwarded my emails and forwarded my text messages to people so that I don't even see it. It gets answered and responded
Yeah.
to. And like there's ways that figuring that out. I will also say though, technology is a big, and this is something I'll talk about in the difficult conversations trainings that I'll be doing, but technology is a big impediment to having difficult conversations because it's an interrupter.
Interesting.
If you have your computer screen open, if you have your phone in your hand, if you have your phone even looking at you, while you're having a conversation on Zoom, for example, it's a distraction and it
Yeah.
it immediately takes away from the conversation. It makes it really hard to stay focused and to feel like you're present. And it also makes it really hard to respond authentically when you're distracted by something.
I could not agree more. What a great point.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough balance. I think technology is a huge challenge, especially at work. I mean, those conversations with those anything goes meetings,
Yeah.
unless they're on Zoom, which if they are, you need to close the different apps, close your Outlook, close your iMessage, close all of that stuff on your computer so that you're not getting pop-ups during that distraction or during that conversation so you're not distracted because you've got to be present and focused for those.
My goodness, I really love that suggestion. I want to blast that to the world. Hopefully, this podcast. Let's take this thing international.
Feel free to
It's
do it. The biggest reason that this podcast exists is not for branding. I don't expect anything to really come from this. It's to spread information of stuff that I've learned, or found, or pieces I've put together of stuff. So this can be, I don't care who takes what and steals what. It doesn't matter to me. I would rather people be able to take this to their workplace and implement it and create a more successful workplace where people feel happy and fulfilled than me making a few bucks off of a conversation. So,
no, go international. I'm taking you with me.
all right, sweet.
Let's go.
Just all I want is just cite me. That's all I want.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to be credited. I want to be on somebody's PowerPoint one day, like as a quote of something I
Dr.
said.
Blake, Dr. Blake.
Would love that. Nothing more.
Yeah, how's school though? Can I ask you a question in this podcast?
Well, hello. My favorite topic. Yeah, school is great. School is great. It's been a challenge. This semester is different than last semester, and watching it evolve, I am learning so much, and I'm not just learning through what they're teaching us through the textbooks and the articles and the conversations. They're modeling what good leadership is to us. The program really walks the walk and talks the talk. And it's been really interesting and amazing to see how much they really do promote um, what mental health in the workplace looks like. Like how they take mental wellness in the workplace, what that looks like. They really take care of each other and they take care of us. And it's really
How,
cool.
how'd you find this program?
Um, LinkedIn, actually. Okay, so I was Googling all over the place looking for my master's is in leadership. And I was looking for a doctoral program, but everything was IO psychology, industrial organizational psych. And it's a little bit too scientific for me. And so I was trying to find something that was more focused on the leadership side, like the human and the behavioral science side of things. And was on LinkedIn one day and someone's post came up and I saw that they have a doctorate in leadership psychology, clicked on their post and sort of went down this trail. And turns out like it's a great school in Boston called William James College. That's actually known more for their clinical training, but they've started this whole leadership psych side of it. And I don't know. I love the program. It's a challenge. It's long. It's a long program, but
Yeah.
they seem to really be training us from the ground up. I mean, they don't miss anything. It's long for a reason. They're really making us great practitioners.
Well, I have a ton of respect for what you're doing. And, although there may be others doing it, you also take the step and put yourself out there, which is not easy. I know that firsthand. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to order a journal at the beginning or the end of last year to journal my fears almost every morning about running a startup. And you're putting, I mean, you are your business. You're putting yourself out there with this information that you're learning. So that's even more scary. I'm held behind I'm behind a brand and a big organization, and you're putting you out there with this knowledge. But I just have a ton of respect for it.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you and I might be on the same journaling protocol. Are you a Huberman Lab guy? No, no, or never
That
mind.
didn't land. I have no clue.
Never mind. Because he talks about journaling protocols. I started two at this end of last year as I was transitioning from my last company to doing this now. I started journaling too and started journaling my fears every morning because
Wow.
it's also was like I'm really branching out on my own and I've always been able to kind of hide behind either a brand of a company or have a partner or somebody who I was able to hide behind a little bit. So it's a very vulnerable process, but I think in the end, as long as we have the intention of educating and helping others, and that's our true intention, and it's what I'm doing is not intended to brand myself, it's just to educate and spread information that I think is
Yes.
valuable. I think that's where we're able to get over those fears, really. Like,
Yeah, and you can tell the difference. Like, I don't know about you, but I can tell the difference when someone's putting it out there, when it's authentic. I mean, not always. I'm not God,
sure,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
I don't always know, but you get a pretty good sense for it. So,
You're a human lie detector.
yeah, exactly. I'm calling you out on this.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's how I try to do my own if I'm doing anything on social media. I really try to hold myself to that as well. Do I really want to do this or is this really, am I feeling it? If I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to do it. But real quick, I wanted to go back to the journaling because um it's really helped me find balance, back to workplace wellness because this is just a personal anecdote about it, but it's helped me find balance, work-life balance because this journal, it actually has hummingbirds on it, which is our Spirence icon, so that
Nice.
it stays only to business. I have
Oh,
a personal
wow.
one too, but this is only business related so
Hmm.
that it helps me stay focused on what I want to accomplish that day or that week instead of spinning, when you're building a company and, a brand and all of those things, it's, at least in my experience, it can be really overwhelming sometimes. So it just helps me stay focused on, this is, first of all, this is what you're going to do today or this week. These are your goals, but also this is why you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's
Do,
very,
do you have a specific, like, is there a time frame? How long does it take you to do this every day?
oh, it depends. Some days I'll literally just write on the page, I blah, 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 I just need to just vent to the page.
Yeah.
And then some days it's, a good 5 minutes that I'm really writing a stream of consciousness. And, or if I'm writing about one situation in particular of, I don't know if I should hire this person or this person, I walk out, write out all of my thoughts
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
so it just depends. I'd say it's anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes that I'll do
Wow.
it. And it's not always every day. I'd say average is 2 to 3 times a week that I do it.
And how much time, and obviously you can't put an exact number to this, but how much time do you think it saves you throughout the week of worrying or trying to process your thoughts throughout the day as you go? Is this like so those 10, 15 minutes you're spending journaling, sounds like saves you later on.
I don't know that I can quantify it. I know it's been a game changer for me.
Okay.
I have several friends who are also either starting companies or they're building companies, and I've recommended, actually one friend was already doing it because he's in an incubator group, and
Mm,
they had recommended something similar. But it's been a game changer because
wow.
I stay more clear and focused. It's you can set out every morning to accomplish every goal of building a company, or you can set out every morning to accomplish, the daily goal of building a
Yeah.
company. And that's really what it's looked like at Spirence. We just lay the bricks one at a time, and all of a sudden we've built a pretty nice wall so
You
far.
just you just gave me such a great soundbite to promote this on social media. That was such a good quote there. I love that. And I will be using that. And I think we should end on that note. I think this was an incredible conversation. There's so many little Easter eggs hidden throughout this conversation. So I really hope people enjoy that. I hope people take the time to listen to the entirety of this, or they can skip around. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and to have this conversation.
Well, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. I think you're such an interesting person. So
Cool.
thank you for having me on. I know I'm very excited about what you're doing, what we're doing together, and just all of it. So
I've always wanted to be called an interesting person. So thank you.
look at
I'm going
this.
to take that.
I told you your hair looked good and I called you an interesting person all
Today is
within
my day.
an hour and a half. Yeah.
So my wife is technically my Valentine today, but Laura, no. All
You
right,
can have a blonde, you can have a brunette.
perfect. Just looking for a redhead. Any redheads out there, go ahead and email me. No, but seriously, thank you. I think this was a great conversation, and to me, it's these types of conversations that are going to make huge impacts in workplaces and are going to make a huge difference in the lives of many people within the workplace. And then they're going to bring it home and they're going to make a huge difference at home, and it's going to keep butterflying effect out. So thank you so much for this conversation. Where can people find Spirence? Where can they find you? Let's plug everything.
Oh, sure. Spirence is www.spirencewellness.com. That's our website. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's just Laura Kunz. I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever. It's just
I'll make sure that I post it it'll
Thank
be
you.
posted in the podcast notes, and on YouTube, it'll be posted in the caption.
I'm not a good social media plugger, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Hey, okay.
Hey.
Catch me on MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And everybody who's listening, we appreciate you taking time to listen to another episode of The Workplace Wonder. Today, we have talked about mental health literacy. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this conversation, leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening, any of the podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. If you didn't like this conversation, just keep moving. You don't have to leave a review. There's no reason. Don't be a jerk. Don't leave that 1-star review. No one wants it. No one cares. Okay? So just positive feedback only. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.